is the Demystifying Crypto and Building Wealth podcast.
I knew that would be worth trillions.
That had never existed in human history.
There's been massive opportunities.
The #1 podcast to help you understand and get insights into the crypto world, blockchain technology, wealth building, and financial investing. Now, here's your host, Tico Tawari, the world's #1 most trusted cryptocurrency analyst and Wall Street veteran with decades of experience in the financial space.
Hello, friends, and welcome to this week's Crypto Update. We don't really have a name for this, do we? Okay, all right. So let's get things kicked off. So last week we were trading at around 5960K on Bitcoin. All of the altcoins were down, and the headline for my IG Live last week was, buy. It's time to buy. So hopefully, as we've been going through this process now, I think I've been doing these since May of this year, you are starting to learn that when people lose hope and when prices crash, it's when you have to take action. So here we are right now, and Bitcoin is running and gunning. We've been as high as $68,695 on the futures. We're right at the top of the trading range, pushing up against 70K. And if you're a trader, you don't buy up here. And even if you're a hodler, you don't buy up here. You don't buy at the high end of the trading range. So as you are opportunistically putting capital to work, whether that's short-term capital or long-term capital, you want to make Bitcoin's inherent volatility and the FOMO in Bitcoin work for your favor. So the best time to put new money into Bitcoin is not when you feel emotionally comfortable to do so. It's when you feel emotionally uncomfortable. So, for instance, when I do my promotions for my newsletters, I consistently do them during periods of time when market sentiment is just absolutely horrible. And it definitely hits my sales. I don't sell as many newsletters as I could because the sentiment is so poor. And unfortunately, people just have not yet trained themselves to take action when sentiment is bad. But that's where all the money is. That's where all the money is. If you look at your brokerage statements or your crypto statements, and if it's broken down by when you purchase them, you'll see that your biggest profits always come from when you buy when sentiment is at the worst, when sentiment is terrible, when you were throwing up into the garbage can next to your desk just right after you press the buy button. And that's just, if you can train yourself to take action when other people are afraid, you're generally going to have a pretty good life. At least financially speaking, you're going to have a pretty good life, because most people cannot get past that initial hurdle of doing something in the opposite direction of everyone else. Now, that comes with some caveats. When you are going in the opposite direction of other people in the financial markets, asset that you're doing it with has to be a great asset, because even if your timing is bad, if you have a great asset, over time, the value of a great asset will increase. Where I've seen people, myself included, make enormous mistakes to the tunes of millions of dollars, is have that approach of buying on weakness when sentiment is bad, but buying crappy assets. So this is really, really important that you focus that mental fortitude, that emotional fortitude that you are building, that muscle that I'm hopefully helping you build, that you focus that muscle around great assets, because nothing will save you from buying bad assets. The only thing that will save you from buying bad assets, if you buy a bad asset, is a raging bull market, because everything goes up in a raging bull market. But we don't want to have to rely on a raging bull market. We want to know that our asset is a fundamentally good asset, and that time is a friend to our asset. So what does that mean? Time is a friend to our asset. It means that even if we have bad timing, as time goes by, the value of our asset will rise. And what we're looking for is the value of our asset to rise at a greater rate than the rate of inflation. And if it's a risk asset, we want it to rise. We have two benchmarks. We want it to rise faster than the rate of inflation, and we want to get a better return than we would by just having the money in the S&P 500. Otherwise, you just put your money in the S&P 500 and don't worry about any other investment. So when you're looking at assets, not just Bitcoin, but an asset that you want to hold, I'm not talking about an asset that you want to trade. You have to ask yourself, is this an asset that over time will beat the rate of inflation and over time will beat the S&P 500? And if you can't answer that question in the affirmative, then that's not an asset to hold for the long term. And that might not even be an asset to buy on weakness. That just might be an asset that you trade. So it's very important that you have a good mental framework for what you want to trade and what you want to hold. Very often people will trade and then the trade will go in the wrong direction and they hold on to it and they're like, oh, I'm just going to turn it into a long-term investment. So you really want to avoid that. So we're having some comments here about when moon. We've gone from $15,000 to $68,000 in what, a year and a half? That's an insane rally. That's an insane rally, and we're going to go higher. What do we do tomorrow or the next day? I have no idea. Here's what I know about Bitcoin is you don't buy it at resistance. And we're pushing right up into resistance. There is a world of resistance between $70 and $72 and $74,000, a ton of resistance. If you're a short-term trader, you buy at 60, you sell at 68, 70, you make 15% in a week, right? I mean, that's incredible. And if you're a long-term hodler, just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. When we went down to 60K, I was buying more Bitcoin. Am I buying more here at 68? No. I either want to see us break out or see us pull back again, and then I'll buy some more then. Question is, where will you put your cash when you cash out? It's a good question. A lot will depend upon where we are in the world. Generally, asset prices, when you're at your wealthiest, asset prices are at their most expensive. What you're probably better off doing, at least for me, I'm just thinking out loud and I'm talking about myself, probably go into short-term government bonds and then, figure out, where the next cheap asset is and what that cheap asset will be. It unlikely will be equities, unlikely will be real estate, and I might have to wait a year or two for the air to come out of the market before I can deploy that capital, which is fine. Question is, where does the current strength of the dollar come from? It's coming because long-term rates are staying high while short-term rates are low. And so that's where it's coming from. So it's attracting money back into dollar-denominated assets, specifically 10, you can buy 2-year bonds and get almost 4% now, and 10-year bonds and get over 4%. The other thing that is happening is because the yield curve is steepening, meaning that short-term rates are below long-term rates, bank profits are shooting through the roof. That's why you see bank stocks going bananas right now. Question is, will high unemployment affect the bull run? Well, I talked about this last week. Were you on last week, Rohil? And so I'm going to ask you a question. What do governments do when employment goes up? Unemployment goes up. When unemployment goes up and the economy slows down, what do governments do? They print, right? They print money. And so if they print money, is that bullish or is that bearish for Bitcoin? It's bullish. Might not be bullish right away, right? And they cut rates, which is very bullish for Bitcoin. So you've seen how Bitcoin reacts. When the spaghetti hits the fan, people cash out Bitcoin because it is an immediate source of liquidity. They use it to either feel safe to go to short-term bonds, cash, or they use it to pay off their margin loans. And then once they get an idea as to what the policy response is going to be, they come flooding back into Bitcoin because they know that the policy response is always devalue the dollar by printing more money. And so every single time I have seen an exogenous event, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but an external event that has blown up capital markets, it's been a buying opportunity for Bitcoin. Every single time. Oh my God, there's going to be a recession. Bitcoin drops. Great buying opportunity. Oh my good Lord, we got a global pandemic. Everything's going to zero. Bitcoin drops 50%. Amazing opportunity. So And the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is you don't have to wait a long time for it to recover in price. Generally speaking, when stocks drop 90%, you have to wait sometimes decades for them to come back in value. Bitcoin, you never have to wait more than 3 or 4 years. It really is an incredible, beautiful asset. And again, it's a very forgiving asset in the sense that even if your timing is horrible, as long as you're willing to wait 3 or 4 years, you're going to get back to even and make money again. Now, that won't necessarily always be true for Bitcoin, but it's going to be true for a long time. And how do I know that? How can I be so confident about that? Because we're so early in the adoption cycle of Bitcoin. And I know for us, our whole world revolves around, not our whole world, but a large part of our financial world revolves around Bitcoin and crypto assets. But for most people, they don't pay any attention to this. It's not something they even think about. But over time, that will change. My core belief around Bitcoin is that Bitcoin will be the benchmark of choice that risk assets are compared to, the way that the S&P 500 is compared to right now. And that Bitcoin will be a core holding in investors' portfolios the way that the S&P 500 is a core holding in investors' portfolios right now. And if I'm right, and I believe I am, and that's going to unfold over years, then Bitcoin at a minimum, trades to the aggregate value of gold, which puts Bitcoin at about $700,000 a Bitcoin. More likely, we will go much higher than that over time. Now, will that be a straight line? Will it be linear? Gosh, I wish it would be. But it won't. It won't be linear. It'll be gut-wrenching. It'll be horrific. It'll be boring. It'll be horrible. It'll be embarrassing for me. We'll have one day when Bitcoin drops 50%. Bitcoin is just this roller coaster that says, okay, I'll change your life, but I'm really going to make you work for it. I'm going to put you through an emotional roller coaster. But no. If you hang in there, I will change your financial life. But I'm going to make you pay. So there's always a fee for anything you want in life. There's an actual cost you have to pay, and then there's an emotional cost you have to pay. And the emotional cost of owning Bitcoin, it ain't cheap. It ain't cheap. So just be aware of that. There's nothing is free in this life. Okay. I think that's pretty much enough pontification for me for one day. Any other questions in closing? And again, remember, I talk about Bitcoin so much because as Bitcoin goes, so goes the entire market. Bitcoin acting like a 15-year-old kid, yes. All right, well, friends, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. And again, I don't have a crystal ball. Someone's asked, do you think the market will drop so we can sell and rebuy? That's not the way that I run this. I run my Bitcoin position. I've always said, you have a core stack and you have a trading stack. Your core stack you leave alone. I'm going to start taking profits at $150,000. I'll probably sell half of my Bitcoin at $150,000. I've been very clear about that. If you have a trading stack, you buy when Bitcoin's getting beat up. And I will tell you when that is. I've told you repeatedly. Last week I said buy Bitcoin, 60 grand. It's 68,000 today. If you're a trader, you don't buy at the top and sell at the bottom. This is how you lose money. You buy at the bottom, you sell at the top. How do you know when you're at the bottom? People are puking out their guts and hating Bitcoin. That's it. Sentiment is bad. You don't want to buy it. That's your cue to go buy some. And then when it's, when you get that big rally, we've rallied 15% in a week. That's a huge rally. Traders are going to take profits. Will we break above 70K? I don't know, and I don't need to know. That's my point. I don't need to know. If I have a trading position, yeah, I need to know when to buy. I buy when sentiment is bad. When do I take a profit? Well, if I'm making 15% in a week, I'm going to take a profit on my short-term trading stack. There we go. Okay. I have no idea if the stock market and Bitcoin will trade in tandem. I don't know. How's that for truth in advertising? Like, once you get really clear on what you do know and what you don't know, it's a lot easier to make money, and your life is so much easier. So much easier. You've got guys there that are sitting there trying to look at every single squiggle on the chart and, make sense of it. And, I did that for years. And look, I wasn't broke. I made money, but nowhere near the money that I've made by just getting the big long-term picture correct, taking a position, and just letting the position grow. That has made me a wealthy man versus just sitting there trying to pick the absolute bottom, the absolute top. Is this the right time? Is that the right time? I gave up all of that stuff, and I just focus on the big picture. It's changed the lives of my readers. It's changed my financial life, and I'm going to continue focusing on what works. All right, friends, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. It is always a pleasure to be here with you, and I want you to always remember, let the game come to you.
So that concludes today's episode. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. You can find the show notes on www.tikatiwari.com. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with others, talk about it on social media, and leave a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss another episode. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.